The House will come to order. Please join Representative Judah in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Gregorio, please call the roll.
Representative Zamabile. Arndt. Bacon. Baisley. Benavidez. Representative Benavidez. Representative Benavidez is excused. Burnett. Representative Burnett. Representative Burnett is excused. Byrd. Representative Byrd. Representative Byrd is excused. Bockenfeld. Bradfield. Caraveo. Carver. Catlin. Cutter. Doherty. Duran. Escar. Exum. Froelich. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Hanks. Here. Herod. Holtorf. Hooten. Jackson.
Here.
Judah. Kennedy. Kipp. Larson. Representative Larson. Montine. Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. Representative McKean. Representative McKean is excused. McLaughlin.
Present.
Michelson Janae. Mullica. Neville.
Here.
Ortiz. Pelton. Pico. Ransom. Representative Ransom. Representative Ransom is excused. Rich. Ricks. Roberts. Sandridge. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Representative Soper is excused. Sullivan. Tipper. Titone. Valdez A. Valdez D. Van Beber. Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Williams. Woodrow. Woog. Young. And Mr. Speaker.
What's going on, Carl? You doing good?
With 63 present, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Judah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Journal of Thursday, April 1st, 2021 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes clearly have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Capitol Commission, Reverend Diane File will be down in the basement 7:15 till 8:45. Come get some coffee and get fed your soul.
Representative Arndt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, House Ag, Livestock, and Water Committee will meet at 1:30 promptly, 107. Two bills, 1242 and 1233. Thank you.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if it's Monday, it's finance. So today we'll be meeting at 1:30 in Committee Room 112. We'll be hearing House Bill 1219, 1012, 1132, Senate Bill 20, and House Bill 1208. And we will be moving House Bill 1201 to Thursday. So we will not be hearing House Bill 1201 today. See you in Finance at 1:30.
Representative Hooton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I have received permission to be excused tomorrow morning until 11 a.m. Thank you.
So approved. Representative Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's Nurses Week. I talked about this a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago. These were put on your desk a couple weeks ago. The nurses are going to be gathering on the West Steps at noon to give a little speech. I think it's going to be a great way to honor them for the work that they've done, not only this year, but the work they do for us every day. And so I would encourage you to come out and say hi and meet some nurses on the West Steps.
Thank you, Representative Mullica. Representative Will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My co-chair of the Sportsman's Caucus just joined me, so we want to come down today and remind everyone tomorrow, 8 p.m., okay? If you want to get your hunting licenses in, tomorrow at 8 p.m. is the deadline, so please put in for your deer, elk, antelope, bear, moose, bighorn sheep by tomorrow. Thank you.
Representative Arndt.
And thank you. And members, there's a new license out because the wildlife areas now are looking for you to either have a hunting license, a fishing license, or a new wildlife pass. Please pay attention to that. Before now, that hasn't been enforced, and so you're probably going to want to look into a new wildlife pass for the wildlife areas. And it's hard to know which is a parks and which is a wildlife, but when they merged, it's a little bit tricky. So just pay attention to the signs and get on the CPW website and make sure you have all the right stuff to visit our wonderful natural lands.
Thank you.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission of the Majority Leader, I am asking to be excused Thursday, the 8th, and Friday, the 9th.
So approved. Any further announcements or introductions? Seeing none, the next order of business is third reading of bills. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of the Senate Bill 122.
Senate Bill 122 by Senator Janal, also Representative Froelich, concerning the bulk purchase of opioid antagonists pursuant to a standing order.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 122 on third reading and final passage.
Members, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 122 on third reading and final passage. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. For those participating remotely, Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Please close the machine. With 64 aye votes, no votes, and one excuse, Senate Bill 122 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of the House Bill 1218.
House Bill 1218 by Representatives Duran and Bockenfeld, also Senators Danielson and Garcia, concerning organizational requirements to qualify applicants to be issued the Colorado Professional Firefighter's License Plate.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1218 on third reading and final passage.
Question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1218 on third reading and final passage. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Representative Tipper, please close the machine. With 59 aye votes, 5 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1218 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1223.
House Bill 1223 by Representatives McLaughlin and Soper, also Senators Story and Quorum, concerning the creation of the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office and the Office of Economic Development.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1223 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill. We're just trying to get that bar at the bottom of the screen out of the way so everyone can see their name. The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1223 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. And they are working on removing that bar, just FYI. And I guess it was only me that couldn't see my name, so I apologize for holding everyone up. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative Bockenfeld, please close the machine. With 44 aye votes, 20 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1223 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Jackson, co-sponsor.
I'll tell you after. I'll tell you in a minute.
Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to Senate Bill 102.
Senate Bill 102 by Senators Buckner and Simpson, also Representatives Duran and Will, concerning the continuation of specific dental hygienist functions in connection therewith, implementing the recommendations contained in the 2020 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 102 on third reading and final passage.
Question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 102 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes.
So Michael, as soon as I get through all the theories, I'll come over and help.
Please close the machine. That was nicely done. 65 aye votes, no votes, and 0 excused. Senate Bill 102 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of Senate Bill 78.
Senate Bill 78 by Senators Jaquez Lewis and Danielson, also Representatives Sullivan and Harrod, concerning the responsibility of an individual firearm owner to report a missing firearm.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 78 on third reading, final passage.
Seeing further discussion, Representative Harrod.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request permission to offer a third reading amendment.
Okay, so the question is permission. Please explain, Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This third reading amendment I'd like to offer today is to rename the bill so that it will be known moving forward as the Isabella Joy Thallas Act.
Thank you. Maybe we can, why don't we display it for everyone? I know there's a, okay, great. Is there any further discussion on permission? Seeing none, the question before us is Representative Harrod's request for permission to offer a third reading amendment. Members, we are voting on granting permission.
After we pass.
Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote.
Oops.
Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative McKean,
With a TH?
please close the machine. With 41 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 0 excused, permission to offer a third reading amendment is granted. Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for allowing me this permission. This amendment would change the name of the bill to the Isabella Joy Thallas Act in honor of a beautiful, kind woman whose life was cut too short. Isabella Thallas was shot and killed on June 10th, 2020, in Denver's Ballpark neighborhood while she was walking her dog with her boyfriend, Darian. They were approached by a man who was upset that they had a dog who was doing dog things. And when they tried to ignore him and clean up after the dog, the man opened fire as Isabella and Darian were cleaning up. Darian was shot twice but survived after multiple surgeries and blood transfusion. Isabella died on the scene. Isabella was born June 8, 1999. She died just 2 days after her 21st birthday. Her mother, Anna, remembers her daughter as resilient, forgiving, humble, and kind. At 21, she was still growing into adulthood, but was already a beautiful, amazing, and intelligent woman. Isabella was named after a queen. Her name also means dedicated to God. Her middle name, Joy, was chosen because of the joy she would bring to the world. Isabella went to Highline Academy and Cherry Creek High School, where she was a gymnast and a cheerleader. She was a flyer and went to the national cheer competition. She was a gymnastics coach and loved children. She became a nanny and looked forward to someday starting a family of her own. She loved to travel. She went to Jamaica and Greece, Mexico, Germany, Italy, Paris, New York, Chicago, and more. Isabella never forgot a name or a face. She loved to learn and was a social butterfly. She loved fashion, as her mom does, and finance. Isabella's boyfriend developed the Be a Good Person brand, a message she embraced and lived. She was the oldest of 3 siblings, her sister, Lucia, her brother, Jacob. Their family is extremely close. Her family called her Bella. Her mom and her sister all shared clothes. She was funny and sometimes forgetful. She loved her turbo Mini Cooper, which we hear she occasionally drove a little faster than maybe she should have. Her family loved to laugh and joke with their daughter, as she was a caring friend, sister with a quirky sense of humor. Her and her sister shared a 21st birthday party because their birthdays were days apart. Bella said it was the best day of her life. Isabella died because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was a senseless tragedy. She was shot with a weapon that was stolen and unreported. If that weapon had been reported, Isabella may still be alive. Bella's mom, Anna, says that her daughter died on the day that her daughter died, that we lost a daughter, sister, granddaughter, niece, and friend. The Lord called her home, and she is resting in peace with him. She said, I'm so thankful that the Lord chose me as her mother, to have her be blessed with her for 21 years and one day. At the end of the day, all you have is your belief and your hope in God. She is with him, and she is dancing with the angels. She wanted to tell her daughter, I love you, Bella. Mama loves you. Losing a child is something that no parent should have to endure. Anna said she learned of her daughter's death from the news articles. She didn't even realize her daughter was involved at first. She eventually learned her daughter's boyfriend was at Denver Health, but Isabella was not there. I hope no one in this room ever has to go through that. Anna said she rushed to the crime scene to be with her daughter and waited for 7 or 8 hours until they took her body away because she wasn't going to leave her baby there. Again, this is something that no one should have to endure. Isabella's father, Josh, said at her memorial service that he knew the Lord's plan was for her to touch and impact all of us in the way that she has her family. He said that her agenda was God's agenda, and that her death had made the world stand still, with hopes that her death would help the world remember to live in kindness, joy, and love. He said that the Lord's plan was to bring us together, and that in her name, we need to put our best foot forward and to not just talk about being kind to one another, but to actually do it. Isabella's family is here, Anna, Josh, Lucia, and Jacob. I want to thank you for your courage, for working on this bill, for fighting in your daughter's honor and memory. I'm excited about the park coming to my district. The mural is beautiful, but it shouldn't be there. Members, we don't know if this bill would have stopped the tragedy that happened, but in Isabella's honor and honor of the family, I hope that we can vote together and support this one step forward in ensuring that we don't have more senseless tragedies like this again. I honor the family and thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Anna, and everybody for being here today. Having your child's name added to a bill like this is really the least that we could do. I know that we would rather live in anonymity. I'd rather that no one knew my kid's name or mine. That would mean that, yesterday when we had Easter, he'd be sitting there with us and his sister and his grandmother, but that's not the case. So thank you so much for this. One of the things I learned from my son was to make sure that I had no regrets. He made it pretty clear that if you wanted to say something, if you wanted to do something, that you should do it, because you don't ever know if you're going to have that chance again. So This is my chance, and I'm going to ask all of you to help us and vote yes on this bill.
And Representative Sullivan, we're on the amendment.
Okay. Oh, okay. We can vote on the amendment first then? and then
Yep,
we come back?
that's great. Can somebody move the amendment? Representative Harrod.
Thank you. I think, are we still on the permission? No, we got the permission, so I move the amendment L030 and ask that it be displayed.
Is there any further, it's been properly moved and displayed, any further discussion on L030? Seeing none. Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote on amendment L030. Those participating remotely, Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote? Sorry, Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative Catlin, Ransom, Van Bever. Please close the machine. With 42 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 0 excused, L030 is adopted. We are now to the bills. Is there further discussion? Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I was starting with before, I'm going to ask everybody for a vote on this. And especially to the 24 of you over here, I'm going to ask for your vote today. And I'm asking for your vote coming from a place where I have already done what I am asking you to do. If you recall, last year, I stood right here in this spot, defiant to my leadership, defiant to the Democratic Party of the state of Colorado, defiant to the governor of the state of Colorado, and I stood here with my binder and my props and my slideshow and my video that I sent out to everybody, talked myself nearly hoarse for an hour and a half on an issue that in my district is 50-50 at best. It's an issue that we talked about on the doors, that I explained to them, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I will stand up for and do that. This particular bill that I'm asking you to support is supported by 8 out of 10 people in your district. Not 50-50, 8 out of 10. Maybe you can ignore 8 out of 10. Maybe you can just listen to the 11% on an issue like this. But I'll just take you back 6-7 years ago. The people from my district, House District 37, Senate District 27, they used to serve on state affairs. We all know what state affairs is. You can say and do whatever you want, and you get no political ramifications come back at you. That ain't happening anymore. 4 years ago, House District 37 had seats here in the front row.
And Representative Sullivan, let's not impugn anyone's motives. And
Not impugning anybody, just stating some facts, sir.
Let's just keep it to the bill. We're not talking about the bill, to the bill.
This latest incident up in Boulder isn't the same as the incident that happened to us in Aurora. This is a very well-funded community. There isn't a community college down the street. There is a full-fledged 4-year university of enlightenment, a university that has graduated Supreme Court justices, Nobel Peace Prize winners, astronauts, on and on. When that community gets finished burying their people and deciding what they are going to do, I'm confident they are going to be sick and tired of what has been happening in this state. There are going to be those of them who can look and see the pictures of that grocery store, knowing that that's a place that they frequented, knowing that's a place where they grew up as students. And they're going to get activated. They're going to get activated in such a case that more is going to happen because we haven't been doing enough. That's why this bill right here, that is supported by 87% of Coloradans across this state, they're going to be looking to us to see, what are we going to do? Are we listening to them? A no vote says you're not listening to them.
And please, again, we cannot impugn motives, and please keep it to Senate Bill 78.
Thank you, sir. I believe yes votes give the people of this state a sense of hope. Will give them the thought process that we are listening, that we are prepared to do something, that we are prepared to make our communities safer. This one doesn't criminalize anybody. I mean, and it's unfortunate that I can't get people to actually talk to me about this issue. You spend all your time talking at me and pointing at me. Last week, after an interview I did, Gayle King called me back. I've talked to Gayle King about gun violence in the state of Colorado more than I've talked to any of the 24 people sitting over here.
Representative Sullivan. We are to Senate Bill 78.
I'll close. And again, I'm asking you to do something that is counter to what your party, what your leadership may be asking for. But I am asking that you listen to the people of the state of Colorado, and I'm asking for an aye vote on Senate Bill 78.
Is there further discussion? Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've made a lot of promises in this chamber. Actually, I haven't made that many because I tend not to do that. But I did make a promise to the sponsor of this bill that I would always listen, that I would always seek to understand. I meant that. And I meant that not just on a personal level as a parent who has lost a child, but on a level of a desire to make sure that we do the best work we can here for the entire state of Colorado. I will never stand at this podium to threaten members with electoral consequences of whether or not they vote yes or no on a bill. And in fact, shame on us if that's where we go. Shame on us if we take a tragedy that absolutely deserves to be honored and come at the last minute and say we want to name this because it's important, but we also have a process. I get called an institutionalist occasionally because it is important what we do here, to the point that it is important for all time, not just a moment. What we are here to talk about today is, does this bill comport with our understanding of the way not only that our constituents in our districts feel it is important, but with our understanding of the United States Constitution, of what it matters when we chip and chip and chip away at the freedoms that we have, all in the interest of a specific desire. Folks, you will vote the way you need to vote. I would never assume that you accept the diktat from a party, God forbid from leadership. I would assume that what you will do is make the best decision you can for the best of this state. I am honored to serve with you. I am honored to trust you with that. Mr. Speaker, thank you for your admonitions. I rose today because we trod dangerously close to an edge of telling people they will face consequences if they don't do what we want them to do. Vote as you will for all the reasons you have.
Representative Perrin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader, for your words. I just want to bring us back to the bill. There's process mentioned. We typically rename bills on thirds. That is the process. The family is here today, and I believe we need to honor them. I could never tell someone how to grieve the loss of their child. Bella's mom is working so hard every single day to ensure that her memory is not forgotten. I honor that. I also honor my colleague for fighting every single day to ensure that his son is not forgotten. I ask that we give grace for those who are grieving. To the bill, I hope we can see through partisan politics on both sides, because this bill was not supported by either party initially. And look at what the bill actually does. Bella was murdered by someone who had a firearm that was lost and not reported by a law enforcement officer. The number one question I get about this bill is, isn't that already the law? Don't we already have to do that? Why wouldn't someone do that? And as a responsible gun owner myself, I will say that it is my responsibility, if my weapon becomes lost or stolen, for me to report that immediately. The consequences in this bill are minimum, but we hope it will educate and change behaviors. $25 fine for the first offense. That's it. That's all this bill does. But it honors Isabella's memory and hopefully will change behaviors so we can get a better hold of these firearms that are lost or stolen. This bill will have as much of an impact as we as Coloradans and we as leaders in our district want it to have, alongside of law enforcement who's fighting for education for people to understand that this is important. But with Isabella's mom here and family here, I know it will have statewide impact and it will change behaviors. I'm looking at my colleague's water bottle, who apparently prepared for this day with his Be a Good Person. Or close to it. I just want members to remember that this is not the big fight that we're having over guns over the next couple of months that we'll continue to have over years. This is one simple bill that most people think is already in effect that will have an impact. So I ask for grace, and I ask for an aye vote today. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 78? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 78 on Majority Leader Esker. Oh yeah, hold on. Yes, thank you for that. Majority Leader Esker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 78 as amended on third reading.
The question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 78 as amended on third reading and final passage. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Please close the machine. With 41 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 78 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Jackson, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of the Senate Bill 121.
Senate Bill 121 by Senators Hansen and Priola, also Representatives Bockenfeld and Byrd, concerning modifications to the revised Uniform Unclaimed Property Act.
Majority Leader Esker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 121 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 121 on third reading and final passage. See no further discussion. Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Representative Duran. Representative Duran. Please close the machine. 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 excused. Senate Bill 121 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of the House Bill 1187.
House Bill 1187 by Representatives Young and Pelton, also Senators Winter and Rankin, concerning the implementation of case management redesign to ensure conflict-free case management for members eligible for long-term services and supports under the Medicaid program.
Majority Leader Esker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1187 on third reading, final passage.
Question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1187 on third reading and final passage. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Neville votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Madam Majority Leader, please close the machine. 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 excused. House Bill 1187 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Jackson and McLaughlin, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. We're going to move forward with general orders, second reading of bills. Representative Ricks. You have heard the motion. See no objection. Representative Ricks will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for a reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folder. Flow amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader. The court rule is relaxed. Do you gavel again? No. Okay. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1216.
House Bill 1216 by Representatives Valdez and Van Winkle, also Senator Gonzalez, concerning the ability for certain marijuana licenses to change the designation of marijuana from retail to medical.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
I move House Bill 1216.
To the bill.
All right, folks, this is a pretty simple bill. What it allows is a one-time change in designation from recreational marijuana to medical marijuana. It helps us to meet patient needs. Does not include any refunds on any excise taxes paid, and I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have very little to add to that. It should be stated that at no point does a plant ever leave the seed-to-sale tracking system. That is very important for public safety. These are businesses in good standing, good order, and it just will help, well, frankly, reduce the amount of plant and other things that these business owners have to keep on their property. Good bill, vote yes.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1216. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Possibly. The bill passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the House Bill, Senate Bill 096.
Senate Bill 96 by Senators Colker and Priola, also Representative Byrd, concerning the continuation of the Workers' Compensation Classification Appeals Board and in connection therewith implementing recommendations contained in the 2020 Census Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I move Senate Bill 2196.
To the bill.
Yes, members, Senate Bill 96 is a bill that renews the Workers' Comp Classification Appeals Board and also allows insurance agents to be appointed to serve on the board. I ask for your yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative McKean, or Majority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Who are the members that serve on this board, and have any of them ever claimed workman's comp?
Representative Byrd?
Minority Leader McKean, that is a great question. I am not certain whether any of them have ever received workman's compensation insurance, but I do know that the two members that we are allowing to be appointed to the board, this is in lieu of mandating that these be salaried employees of Pinnacle Assurance. So now we are giving some additional flexibility.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You just go right ahead and stick with that first one, and we're good. And thank you very much, Representative Byrd. So my subsequent question is then, this is part and parcel of privatizing Pinnacle Assurance, I'm assuming?
Representative Byrd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Minority Leader, that would be incorrect. And I respectfully ask for a yes vote.
Representative Holtiff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the bill sponsor, my question is, how many people on this committee that the commissioner appoints are business people that represent the class of individuals and organizations that have to fund the Workmen's Compensation Fund? Because you see, you can put all the insurance agents in the world on a board. But who represents the people that have to pay for it? Are any of those people represented? I have my concerns and my doubts.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Holtorf, for the question. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to get you the answer. And members, I respectfully ask for your yes vote.
Is there Representative Holtorf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Commissioner of Insurance, who has oversight responsibilities, is going to appoint, under this bill, it looks like, 2 insurance agents. So my question goes back to the bill, and that is who and how are the rest of the people represented? Is there any consideration for the businesses, and those chief executives, those chief financial officers, and those insurance, the workman's compensation insurance managers that have to manage and make sure that the workman's compensation is properly compensated? I have reservations and concerns as Pinnacle Insurance and the Commissioner of Insurance continue to appoint the people that are on one side of the issue, but there's no representation on the other side of the issue. Because a good board or commission would have all parties involved, thus avoiding any bias with respect to the intent and the administration of the commission. So my question goes back to the bill sponsor or anybody in the chamber that may have this information. Because I think by passing this type of bill, we're imparting more bias within the commission. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Byrd? Is there any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 96. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
The bill passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of Senate Bill 141.
Senate Bill 141 by Senators Priola and Colker, also Representatives Burnett and Baisley, concerning the competitive solicitation method used by the statewide Internet Portal Authority to contract for a statewide portal integrator.
Would you like to move it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's a, okay.
Representative Baisley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 21-141 of the Committee of the Whole.
To the bill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, folks, what this is about, this has to do with the State Internet Portal Authority, SIPA, as we call it, and I serve on the board, and both Representative Burnett and I both serve on the Joint Technology Committee, where this bill came out of that committee. What this will do is expand in statute what the allowances of behavior for State Internet Portal Authority for finding soliciting help from contractors. Right now, the implication in statute is that all they can do is ask for a request for a proposal. They cannot ask for a request for information and negotiate best and final offers and some of the more standard practices for gaining services and products from outside organizations. And so this gives them just a broader authority towards that. And I think it's good business and good practice for us.
Rep. Burnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bipartisan bill. It got unanimous votes out of the Senate as well as the House Committee. There is no fiscal note, so I urge a yes vote on Senate Bill 21-141.
is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 141? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 141. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The bill passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of Senate Bill 157.
Senate Bill 157 by Senator Priola, also Representatives Michelson, Janay, and Baisley, concerning an increase in the aggregate amount of qualified charter school bonds for which the General Assembly may appropriate money to restore debt service reserve requirements.
Representative Daphne Marcusine Janay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 157. There is no committee report.
To the bill.
I'll start. Yes, please. Okay. So what this bill does is it expands a currently existing fund or umbrella that covers when charter schools get their funding for building schools so that they can get the rate Representative Gray, no shaking your head from the gallery, so that they can get the same rate as the state. It has saved over $1 million in interest payments. It has never defaulted. There are about 13, 14 schools who would like to take advantage, who have the high grading and ranking to be able to do so, and we ask for an aye vote.
Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So everything's good about this bill. All it really is doing is increasing a line of credit from $500 million to $750 million, but it's always has worked out well. No defaults. This expands opportunities for charter schools to get their buildings in place. So this is excellent. The only downside to this bill is something that neither Representative Michelson, Janay, or I. What?
I have answers.
You answered? No. The downside is the name.
Yeah, no, I have an answer to that.
Oh, you have an answer to that? Yeah. The moral obligation bill. That's the one embarrassing part. I'll leave that to my colleague.
Representative Janay.
Thank you. That was the most interesting part of the conversation and the debate on this bill. And so I did a little bit of research with the help of, outside of the walls. And moral obligation program is not a term officially used in the statute, which is good to know. The name is an S&P credit concept. State higher education has the same pledge on Colorado Mountain College and other state colleges. So it is an S&P credit concept. And it's not really in statute. So there you go, name.
Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, then, given that, I ask for your moral obligation to vote yes.
Representative Gray.
Oh, dear.
He's good.
Just for the record, none of that is what this is. A moral obligation pledge is a moral obligation from the state and the government to pay these bonds if they're not paid, but it's not binding. And that's the distinction. It's not created by S&P or anything like that. It's the state saying, we say we're going to do this if we need to, but we're not doing it in a binding way. And because if they're going to do it a binding way, what provision of the Constitution, everyone, would need to be invoked in order for them to do that? Anyone? Tabor, that's right. So anyway, this is expanding the ability for us to make a pledge that say, hey, we're going to do it, but it's on our honor. That's why it's called a moral obligation. It's on our honor, but it's not a legally binding obligation. But as the sponsors have noted, it's never been a problem before and is a good program. I'd ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 157? Or Senate Bill 157? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 157. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The bill passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1222.
House Bill 1222 by Representatives Valdez A. and Van Winkle, also Senators Smallwood and Winter, concerning aligning local governing authority regulations to expand opportunities to access child care and family child care homes.
I'll move it.
Representative Valdez A.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1222 and the Business Affairs and Labor Report.
Oh, no report.
Oh, wait, no report. No committee report.
There is
Never
no
mind.
committee report. To the bill.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a great bill. Essentially what it does is allows us to better align some of our statewide regulations about in-home child care centers to allow us to address what has been a growing shortage within this area. This having child care affordable and plentiful is a key to our economic recovery, and so this is a great bill. I do have an amendment.
Please display the amendment.
And move.
Yep.
The amendment has been properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L002. Members, this amendment helps us to get the firefighters into a good position. They had discussed some concerns about ensuring that they had a voice at the table in the creation of these regulations. We agree, and this amendment ensures in statute that they will be a part of that discussion going forward, and we would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L002? Seeing none. No. Oh, yes, there is. Representative Holter.
Oh, leave it there.
Copy the amendment.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair, esteemed colleagues. So this was a concern that came up in the committee. I will tell you that as long as this does not, and I'll ask the bill sponsors, as long as this does not take away from the heart and soul of the intent of this, then I'm comfortable with it. But I want to make sure that the fire department inspectors, the fire inspectors, who in committee were trying to drive a wedge into this great bill, are not trying to do so indirectly.
Representative Valdez A.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Holter, for those concerns. It does not. It just ensures that they're a part of the conversation, which we think is very fair, but it does nothing to substantially or really in any way change the bill other than to say the firefighters will be at the table to discuss any changes and make sure their opinions are heard.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment passes. To the bill. Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this bill has been 3 years in the making. It seeks to expand the availability of in-home child care, and the reason for it is we all know that there's a shortage of in-home child care. In the last 20 years, actually, we have statistics to prove this. Child care providers in our state has been nearly cut in half. And since the start of COVID, 10% of child care providers have permanently closed their doors. And that, of course, has tremendous real-world impacts on Colorado families. Folks, these are neighborhood moms who want to start their business to provide regular and dependable child care for their families in their neighborhood. But what we're hearing from the folks that are trying to open their doors and start these businesses is they run into never-ending regulations. That's right, Representative from Broomfield, never-ending regulations and conflicting regulations. So in the fall and summer of 2019, I don't want to steal my co-prime sponsor because he's been working on this issue for a long time. I thank him greatly for his hard work on this issue. And so I will pass it over to him because I don't want to take his thunder.
Representative A. Valdez.
Thank you. I would just echo the sentiments that this has been a long time in the making. This was a study bill in 2019, led us to this bill as a solution for the what I think we can effectively call a crisis in home child care. This bill rights that ship, gets us back on track, helps us to get folks back to work and have affordable child care. It's a great bill. Please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Holter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the bill sponsors for this bill, both Representative Valdez and Representative Van Winkle. I will tell you, this bill right here will do more for real people, the little people in Colorado, the people that are on the streets that are trying to get to work, that don't have a place to take their kids. So then one of the family members can't work. This bill maybe one of the most impactful pieces of small business economic relief legislation that you will see come through this chamber this year. I don't think people realize how important this is. I know the bill sponsors do. I know Representative Valdez does. That's why he's been a champion of this for going on 3 years. That's Valdez A, just to clarify. So, thank you for bringing this. Thank you for caring about real people. Thank you for caring about the people in our communities that are just trying to get ahead and get to work and impact the economy, and now they have a place for their kiddos to go. And the people that are running these small businesses, which will proliferate all over Colorado, rural and urban, now have a chance to get to work and lift our economy in a post-COVID-19 era. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1222. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 1222 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1095 one day till tomorrow, April 6th.
Is there any objections? Seeing none, the House Bill 1095 will be laid over for tomorrow. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1186.
House Bill 1186 by Representatives Gray and Sullivan, also Senators Winter and Bridges, concerning relieving the Regional Transportation District of statutory restrictions related to the district's operations.
Representative Gray.
I would defer momentarily to Representative Sullivan.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do I have to move the committee report?
The bill and the committee.
I move the bill and the committee report. Ask for an aye vote.
House Bill 1186 has been moved, and the Transportation and Local Government Report.
Let me talk about the committee report.
To the committee report, please. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee, we made a couple of changes to modernize the language about how we talked about one of the provisions regarding private contractors and the requirement of how much time can be spent and how much of the budget can be spent within RTD on platform time versus hours, and also reinstalling the 58% requirement, and I'd ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the committee report for House Bill 1186. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No! The committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to talk a little bit about this RTD bill here. Thank you to Representative Gray for bringing me on board with this. You see, RTD brings me to work every single day when I come down. I mean, I've actually been listening to the rest of the members down here who talk about ways to keep our cars off the highway. So mine is sitting in my driveway, and I take a bus down every single day. Getting down's normally not the problem. It's getting home is the other thing, and that's why I'm keeping an eye on this. With the changes from with COVID being about, with some schedule changes, some delays, that kind of stuff, we've got to make sure that to imagine a great city, that we have a great public transportation operation and the other resources that they have. So I am fully supportive to this. Enjoy riding the bus back and forth every single day, and I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is the result of a process that we kept going during our COVID summer and fall based on concerns people had about RTD and its path forward. So myself, Senator Winter, and the governor put together something we call the RTD Accountability Committee that has been working diligently. And they're working on a lot of different projects. I can fill anybody in who wants to hear about them, about how RTD governance can get better and how RTD operations can get better. But several of the things that they identified as solutions that were needed required changes in statute. And this bill does several of those things. One is it removes the fare box recovery ratio requirement, which is a nerdy sounding thing, but it means that the amount that is spent by RTD based on the money that comes in from passengers versus the amount it takes in from other areas like sales taxes needs to be fixed at a certain level, and that requires an artificial inflation on the prices that are charged to customers. Thus far, it hasn't been a huge problem, as they testified in committee, but it is something that they'd like to have flexibility regarding. Another is how they use their property. It relaxes restrictions on property owned by RTD near their various stops for their trains or their buses, and allows them to license that out to developers, which will bring money back into the system. Most of these reforms predate COVID, but COVID has put a harder hit on RTD and all kind of public transit systems. And so this will allow them to have greater financial health and more financial flexibility about how they provide service to low-income individuals, and so would ask for your support. Thanks.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Chair. And members, I voted no in committee on this bill because it puts RTD even more so into direct competition with private businesses. It rolls back many of the selling points that encourage metro area communities to join RTD, and I think there will be several metro area communities who are going to be quite upset by this bill and reconsider their membership in RTD, and because mainly it will disproportionately impact the suburban areas, those riders of RTD, and it will ultimately hurt ridership in the very problem it's trying to fix. It will actually make much worse. So I ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1186. All those in favor say aye. All those who oppose? The ayes have it. The bill passes. House Bill 1186. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee rise and report.
Seeing no objections, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come to order. Representative Ricks. Thank you, Representative Ricks. You have, oh yeah, I should probably first, Mr. Gregorio, please read the report of the committee of the whole. Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it as under consideration the following attached bills, being second reading therefore, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1186 is amended. House Bill 1216, 1222 is amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 96, Senate Bill 141, Senate Bill 157 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1095 laid over until 4/6/2021, retaining their place on the calendar.
Now Representative Rick, sorry about that. You have heard the motion. Thank you, Representative Ricks. Nice job. There are no amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the committee of the whole. Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Neville, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Neville votes no. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative Jackson is excused. Assistant Minority Leader. Please close the machine. With 41 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 1 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Okay, I think we're moving on to resolutions. Message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate has adopted and transmits herewith SJR 21008.
Message from the Senate will be buried in the journal. Introduction of resolutions.
SJR 21-008 by Senators Fields and Buckner, also Representatives Harrod and Exum, concerning recognition of African American veterans. SJR 21-009 by Senators Colker and Liston, also Representatives Young and Carver, concerning honoring Colorado veterans on the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II. SJR 21-010 by Senators Donovan and Woodward, also Representatives Ortiz and Geithner, concerning honoring Gold Star families. SJR 21-011 by Senators Story and Coram, also Representatives Sullivan and Catlin, concerning the recognition and remembrance of military veterans in Colorado who served in the Vietnam War. SJR 21-012 by Senators Pedersen and Lundin, also Representatives Pico and Michelson-Janay, concerning recognition of military veterans and MIA/POW Appreciation Day. SJR 21-013 by Senators Garcia and Simpson, also Representatives Eskar and Luck, concerning the 53rd anniversary of the capture of the USS Pueblo by North Korea. SJR 21-015 by Senators Rodriguez and Priola, also Representatives Valdez A. and Holtorf, concerning recognition of the contributions of Latina and Latino veterans.
Okay, and I know it's kind of warm in here, so there was a request to relax the coat rule, which is totally fine with me. Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, before I move to suspend the rules for the immediate consideration of these, I just wanted to give a quick rundown on how things are going to go today because it's different than most military appreciation days in the past. We're going to move and vote on every single resolution back to back. And then when we're done voting on all the resolutions, we will open the floor to general comments about Military Appreciation Day. So if you have comments and you are not a resolution sponsor, please just hold off until all of the resolutions are completed and voted on, and then we will come down. And both the minority leader and I have had conversations about trying to limit the time at the well so we can continue to get the work done for the rest of the day as well. So just be mindful of that as we move forward with the day. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend the rules for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolutions 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15.
You have heard the motion. I see no objection. The rules will be suspended for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15. I'm not sure what happened to 14. Representative Exum and Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We move SJR 8 and ask that it be read at length.
Or do we're reading at length? Yeah.
That has been properly moved. Representative or Mr. Gregorio.
SJR 21-008, concerning recognition of African American veterans. Whereas the military history of African Americans spans from the arrival of the first enslaved Africans during the colonial history of the United States to the present day. And whereas African Americans have participated in every war fought by or within the United States, including the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, the Indian Wars, World Wars I and II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And whereas nearly 198,000 African American soldiers served during the Civil War, roughly 350,000 African American soldiers served during World War I, and another 1.25 million African American soldiers served during World War II, with many more African Americans serving in the years since World War II. And whereas on July 26, 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, integrating the military and mandating equality of treatment and opportunity for African American soldiers. And whereas desegregation of the military was not complete for several years, and all African American units persisted well into the Korean War. And whereas the last all African American unit was not disbanded until 1954, and whereas until the Korean War, African American veterans were precluded from direct access to benefits from the Veterans Administration, which included VA housing loans, employment assistance, unemployment benefits, and health care. And whereas African Americans continue to serve in the United States military, providing exemplary service, duty, integrity, dedication, and commitment to our great nation. And whereas currently 17% of the United States Armed Forces are African American, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the General Assembly, in recognition of the heroic efforts and great sacrifice of African American veterans, hereby encourage this commemoration throughout the Senate and House of Representatives.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We move that for the adoption of SJR 8 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Senate Joint Resolution? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 8. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Senate Joint Resolution 8 is adopted. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could have that slate. I'm going to speak just for a few minutes about the Tuskegee Airmen. Tuskegee Airmen were the first black military aviators in the U.S. Army Air Corps before there was a U.S. Air Force. Trained at the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama, they flew more than 15,000 individual missions in Europe, North America during World War II. They destroyed or damaged 36 German planes in the air and 237 on the ground, as well as nearly 1,000 rail cars and transport vehicles and German destroyers. In all, 66 Tuskegee trained aviators were killed in action in World War II, while another 32 were captured as POWs after being shot down. Despite these tragic losses, their overall impressive performance earned them more than 150 distinguished flying crosses and helped encourage the eventual integration of the U.S. Armed Forces. What you see on the screen is a relative of mine. Don't know how we're related, but we're related. Not too many people with the last name Exum and born in North Carolina are not related. This is Tuskegee Airman Hervin Exum. He was among non-dwindling generation of African American men who made history with their prowess in fight. Almost 1,000 black men trained to be pilots through the Tuskegee program during World War II. Exum, who died August 18, 2013 at the age of 91 at the Washington Veterans Affairs Medical Center, was one of the last living. According to estimates from the Tuskegee Veterans Group, fewer than 100 remain. Exum was born November 6, 1921, the fifth of 10 children born to John E. and Cora Artis Exum at the family homestead in Eureka, North Carolina. When the war began, Exum joined the Army and qualified for special services, the Tuskegee program. According to his family members, Hervin Exum flew the B-47 Thunderbolt, a single-engine fighter plane. Exum later trained to fly twin-engine craft, likely the B-25 bomber. A historian of the Tuskegee Airmen National Museum stated. His family said Exum later flew Air Force jets on combat missions in the Korean War. In the late 50s, he performed air shows as a hot pilot during Vietnam War. He flew injured troops to hospitals in Japan and Guam as a conductor. And we honor Tuskegee Airman Hervin Exum today, along with the other Tuskegee Airmen. Thank you.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also ask that a photo be displayed. Representative Exum, before we go into that, I do want to say that I could see the favor there. Both very stylish. I know that was his uniform, but it looked very nice. I, too, want to honor our black soldiers. The military means a lot to my family. Those who don't know, I'm a military brat. I was born in Germany. But that honor really started from my grandpa Herod, who you see here. He was in his early 20s at the time. He was in Louisiana when he took that photo. He joined the military to leave the racism and brutality of the South during the time. A lot of black folks did that. It's kind of their way out and a way for a different world. The military taught my family that there is a different path. You don't have to discriminate, but you do have to fight against discrimination in all forms. I think we've heard from many folks about some of the racism that happened within the military. But each time I hear a story about it, I hear a story about someone who overcomes it together with their colleagues, their soldiers, their fellow service people who are of all different nationalities. And I do believe that's where my family's sense of justice came from. My grandpa passed, and you can see us, his grandkids, standing underneath him, because we all carry on that legacy. My Uncle Johnny joined the Army. Uncle Tony joined the Air Force. Aunt Val joined the Army. Aunt Barbara, Army. My dad, Army. Grandkids, Marcus, Herod, Navy. Yosha, Herod, Hintz, Army. Also, in the military service was love. My dad met my mom while serving. My Uncle Johnny met my Aunt Cindy while serving as well. The military means a lot to the black community. We are overrepresented in our numbers, fighting for our country, and always have been. We will continue that fight because we seek a better world for everyone and know that we have duty in that. It's my honor to be a part of this family. It's my honor to know the service and sacrifice that each of them has pursued. And I hope I do them honor by standing here today, supporting them. So thank you all so much for standing. Thanks for your appreciation. I appreciate you and all service members.
Great. Is there a motion on co-sponsors? I think we're having sponsors speak on the bill, on the resolution, then we're moving on to the next one, and then we'll open it up to everybody. Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We ask that the morning roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Is there any objection to adding the morning roll call as co-sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Then we will move on to the next resolution and recognize the sponsors for Senate Joint Resolution 9. That's Representative Young and Representative Carver. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-009 and ask that it be read at length.
SJR 21-009 concerning honoring Colorado veterans on the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II. Whereas during the years 1941 to 1945, some 250,000 of Colorado's sons and daughters served in World War II. And of that number, over 3,500 were killed in action or from wounds suffered on the battlefield. And whereas, of the 586,000 Coloradans who gave the last full measure of devotion, offering their lives so that others might live freely, over half never came home. Their remains unrecovered or buried in American military cemeteries around the world. And whereas, the state of Colorado has a rich history of service in World War II as home of the famed 10th Mountain Division, which trained in the Colorado Rockies at Camp Hale on Tennessee Pass, and the Colorado National Guard's 157th Infantry Regiment, which spent 511 days in continuous combat during World War II, including 4 amphibious landings. Under the command of Captain Felix Sparks, the 157th Infantry Regiment liberated the Dachau concentration camp. Members of both units from Colorado are honored on the Colorado Freedom Memorial in Aurora. And whereas the Colorado Freedom Memorial, dedicated in 2013, honors all Colorado veterans killed in action since the Spanish-American War, and all 3,586 of those killed in World War II are included, making the Colorado Freedom Memorial the only memorial in Colorado to honor all of our fallen by name in one place. And whereas the Colorado Freedom Memorial pays tribute to the men and women of Colorado who served in World War II and those who gave all, and those who return home to build Colorado into the beautiful state it is today. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the General Assembly, in recognition of the heroic efforts and the great sacrifice of World War II veterans from Colorado and across the United States, hereby recognize this commemoration of the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II and encourage support throughout the Senate and House of Representatives.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. And I'm proud to have my name on this particular resolution. You know, in the rural area where I grew up, and obviously in World War II, everybody served. And so that was something that every family had experienced. Those who came back injured with physical injuries, those who came back maybe with no physical injuries, but occasionally you would get them to talk about some of the battles that they had been involved in, and those who didn't come back. I had several great uncles who went down with ships in the Pacific. And when we think about the impact of the hundreds of thousands of Americans that served in World War II, and how that changed the course of history. Mobilized by the attack on Pearl Harbor, but then first order of business, free occupied Europe, and how that set the course for modern history. And then turning to the Pacific and the massive sacrifice that was made to finally bring that world war, terrible world war, to a close. And so we stand in recognition of that sacrifice and ask for an aye vote.
Representative Young.
I'm here to join you in honoring World War II veterans who are still with us and those who passed. My father, father-in-law, uncle, and many of my friends' parents served in World War II. Too often, they weren't able to tell their stories. I never got to hear my Uncle George's stories. He spent his life after the military in a psychiatric hospital until he passed. My father-in-law never shared with us his stories, and we found after his death that his silence was due to the fact that he had been in military intelligence and didn't feel it was his story to share. My father served on an oiler in the Pacific. He was a lieutenant. After graduating from college, he had two goals. He wanted to enlist and marry my mother, and he was successful in both. After the war, as children, we asked him frequently what his service was like. And the only stories we heard were the stories about when he would meet my mother on leave on the West Coast. It wasn't until later in life that he started to share the horrific experiences he lived through in the Pacific. As I said, he was on an oiler, and he began to explain how night after night he would have deck duty, and overhead would be the kamikaze pilots, and he'd be surrounded by military ships trying to protect the oiler, obviously a very popular target. And my father would talk about how he would hear the chat of the U.S. military planes who were discussing what they had to do to protect this oiler and these ships. And it became clear in their chat that they realized that they were going to have to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to protect these ships, which they did. So today, I want to honor the stories of those who were able to share their stories, but all of those who never were, and the honorable work they did, and when they came back to this beautiful state and country, enriched it and built it to the state it is in today. So thank you, and I encourage an aye vote.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 21-009. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? If not, then Senate Joint Resolution 009 is adopted. Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I ask that the morning's roll call be the co-sponsors on the Senate Joint Resolution.
Is there any objection to adding the morning roll call as co-sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Thank you, members. Next, we'll move on to Senate Joint Resolution 2110. Representatives Ortiz and Geithner. Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-010 and ask that it be read at length.
Senate Joint Resolution 21-010 concerning honoring Gold Star families. Whereas, since the Revolutionary War, more than 1 million American soldiers have died in battle and military conflicts. Their families, who have endured these losses and the accompanying grief, are known as Gold Star families. And whereas, named for the practice of families hanging service banners in the windows of their homes with a star for each family member in the armed forces, deep blue stars were displayed for each living member serving, and they were replaced with gold if their loved one lost his or her life serving our country and protecting our freedom. And whereas Grace Darling Sibold founded the American Gold Star Mothers in 1928, her son George was serving in World War I. And while he was abroad, she channeled her worry into visiting hospitalized veterans. When the letters from her son stopped arriving and she learned of his death, she took action in her grief and with a group of mothers established American Gold Star Mothers Incorporated. And whereas, since 1936, Gold Star Mother's Day has been honored through presidential proclamation as the last Sunday of each September. And whereas the acts of heroism and the stories of courage of each fallen soldier are forever remembered in the minds and hearts of their families. And whereas, while national monuments and memorials serve as a strong visible reminder for the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation, Gold Star families are a living legacy of each fallen soldier and can help us all remember and honor these heroes by name. And whereas, long after the battles have ended, and as our stars and stripes of liberty fly, the families who have at home a folded flag and an empty seat at the table deserve our respect and support now. Therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, honor the pride and the pain of the parents and partners and children and siblings of each of our fallen heroes and recognize the families of these proud patriots with an expression of profound gratitude and respect.
Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, there is approximately 250 Gold Star families that call Colorado home. In fact, on October 14th, 2020, the Gold Star Family Memorial was dedicated and is located in Aurora, Colorado. As recent as last year, this body recognized and paid honor to in our small way, by adopting a Resolution 1003 in honor of Sergeant Major Sarter, who passed away, paid the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan on July 13th, 2019. And while the Sarter family can't be here today, it is important. I would like to take a moment to recognize Sarah Lindsay and her aunt Nancy, who are here. Sergeant First Class Lindsay passed away, paid the ultimate sacrifice on March 22nd, 2019. They're in the balcony here with us today. We thank you for your selfless service, and that this resolution may just be a small way that on behalf of you and the many families across Colorado, that we can just take a moment and pay a small bit of tribute to you and the sacrifice that the Lindsay family has paid. And members, today is April 5th. It is actually Gold Star Spouses Day, and how fitting it is that we have Resolution 10 before us. I think at this point it's appropriate. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Representative Ortiz, my brother in arms, as he would like to share a few stories of some service members and their legacy here.
Representative Ortiz.
Members, thank you. We're just coming from Easter weekend, and somehow recognizing and honoring the sacrifice of Gold Star family members seems very fitting. It is that honor no one wants. It's made that much more pointed and painful in a time where we as a nation have sustained decades of combat and conflict, in a time when we have an all-volunteer fighting force. You see, when we serve and swear an oath to the Constitution, we are making a decision not just for ourselves, but for our nation. Strangers that are family by virtue of the Constitution that binds us all together in this great experiment of a constitutional democratic republic. But not just for our fellow Americans that we'll never know, but we're making a decision for our families, the people that love us. They didn't volunteer, but they're definitely in their own way serving with us. Believe me. I remember turning to them often when training would get tough and constantly on deployment. They made possible the constant sacrifices that come with this vocation. They shoulder that burden with us, whether it's a spouse holding down the home and raising the kids alone during training or deployment, or a parent that reflects how in a blink of an eye, that child went from this tiny bundle, this little miracle that's becoming the most important thing in your life, that it's your charge to protect and raise. They are now an adult that chose a vocation that you might not choose for them, because they are willingly choosing to put themselves in harm's way. How could they go from being a crying, laughing, puking, pooping center of your world that depends on you for everything, with bath times, storytellings, tuck-ins, to now depending on a new family where lives are on the line? How could they go from a sister climbing trees with you who is just as ready to play Army as you were to play Castle Time or Tea Time with them, and now she is responsible for leading soldiers in combat herself? A younger brother you would help take care of, the prank wars that would drive your parents crazy, or the endless back and forth of a jump scare war that probably lasted longer than it should well into adulthood. Now at the controls of an aircraft, fighting to save the lives of their new brothers and sisters being ambushed on the ground during deployment. You see, we have to try and put ourselves there if we're going to begin to fathom what it is to be a Gold Star family member, the honor that no one wants. For those of us that serve, Gold Star family members forever have an important place in our hearts. Oftentimes, they become a part of our own extended families. We have Halloween parties, birthday parties, barbecues, mandatory fun time that we have in the military. They become our extended family. One of the most powerful aspects of service are the amazing men and women we serve with. And when I asked Gold Star parents and family members what they wanted me to keep in mind, the one thing that they said is, we didn't do anything special. I wanted to argue with them, but I'm not going to argue with Gold Star parents. We want you to remember our service members. So to that end, I'm going to tell a couple stories. If you would go ahead and put the first photo up. I want to introduce you all to Jose Montenegro. He is the son of Texas, from the border town of Harlingen. He was a part of my squadron, my battalion flying OH-58's Kiowa Warriors. He was a mentor, a friend, a brother. He was outgoing, loved biking, motorcycles, was a blast to be out with, humble yet proud, that somehow mixed love and compassion with strength and a fight like you wouldn't believe. And whether he knows it or not, He saved my life. He's a part of the reason I'm here. Not just alive, but here serving in this chamber with all of you. When I survived my crash, it's difficult going from being a hard-charging aviator to not even being able to sit up in bed under your own power. And he took his precious time off during R&R, scooped his sister, who you see up there, his mom, and their kids, and came to visit me when I was at Walter Reed. And he saw that I was in a really bad way. I confided in him, I don't know if I'm ready for this journey. Part of me wishes I would have died in the crash. Seeing a brother in need, he said, don't say that, hermano. I know you're still here for a reason. You're one of the smartest ones among us. You have to promise me you're going to pick yourself back up and you're going to keep serving this country in the ways that I know you can. I don't make promises I don't intend to keep, and I was not in a place to hear it then. So fast forward to August. It was about a month before everyone was supposed to come home, so I knew that if I didn't make that promise to him, that he would be one of the first ones to get in my face. And I was in a better place, so I did. I wake up on the 5th of September, my phone is blown up, and another Kiowa went down on deployment. And it was his and another friend, Talia Ramirez. If you'll go ahead and put up the next photo. She is the daughter of migrants from Ethiopia. She also loved dirt biking and biking. She was a hell of a combat aviator. The next story I'd like to end with is one of our own sons, the Sons of Colorado. If you could please put up the next photo. This is Frank Bonicati. I didn't get to know him for that long. I had just come to the unit when they had finished deploying. They were already on the schedule to deploy again, and he PCS or transferred duty stations a couple months after. But the things I do remember about him was he was extremely kind, compassionate, loved to cook, and was good at it, and he loved to run. And Rep. Geithner can back this up. I don't know why, but soldiers hate running. I don't know if it's mandatory PT or what it is, but he was one of the few that actually loved to run. I was more into running 1 to 3 miles, a shorter, more attention-getting races, and he taught me the love of the longer distances. And it was just therapeutic, meditative, and we had great conversations. His family would go on and impact policy here. He truly is a son of Colorado. That memorial for the fallen that is across the street here, it was his family that helped work on that and turn it into a reality. I never got the chance to meet his mother while he was in, but in passing through the VA, getting my wheelchairs worked on, I saw his face on a bag with his name tag on the bag of an elderly woman. So I rolled up, and sure enough, it was Sylvia, his mom. And of course I was going to spend time talking with her. And she was one of the ones that I conferred with. And the one thing that she asked me to convey to you all is to please remember, do not let the sacrifices of those few be forgotten. So being a Gold Star family member is an honor that no one wants. They bear a heavy burden, loss and sacrifice that they didn't volunteer for. We that serve take that journey with them in our own ways. We remember our fallen, we keep their memory alive through stories and how we allow their lives, and the best in them to come out through us and how we continue to live our lives. My ask is that you honor them by listening to their stories when you get a chance, share in their grief if you find them in a state of grief, share in the joy and in the best of their service member if they decide to share that with you. To my Gold Star family members out there, we love you. You are always considered family and will always be treated as such. We can never repay your sacrifice and how you had to share your loved ones with those of us that served with them and with a grateful nation. You'll always have a special place in our hearts. Thank you.
Members, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 21-010. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. SJR 21-010 is adopted. Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, I request that this morning's roll call be added as co-sponsors to Senate Joint Resolution 21-010.
Is there any objection to adding the morning roll call as sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Thank you, Representatives. Next, we'll move on to Senate Joint Resolution 21-11, Representatives Sullivan and Catlin. Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We move SJR 11 and ask that it be read at length.
SJR 21-11, concerning the recognition and remembrance of military veterans in Colorado who served in the Vietnam War. Whereas United States military involvement in the Vietnam War began in the Republic of South Vietnam in the 1950s and continued until 1975, involving North Vietnamese regular forces and Viet Cong guerrilla forces in armed conflict with the United States Armed Forces and the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. And whereas during this period, more than 2,700,000 American soldiers, both volunteers and draftees, served tours of duty in Vietnam, with a total of more than 9 million active duty military personnel in what was an extremely long, difficult, and complex war. And whereas more than 220,000 members of the United States Armed Forces, including 623 Coloradans, lost their lives in Vietnam, and more than 300,000 members of the United States Armed Forces were wounded. And whereas, in addition, more than 2,500 members of the United States Armed Forces were listed as prisoners of war or missing in action, including 41 Coloradans, 24 of whom remain unaccounted for. And whereas, according to the Denver Regional Office of the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs, as of 2014, an estimated 7 million members of the United States Armed Forces who served their country during the Vietnam era are still alive today, including more than 120,000 Coloradans. And whereas, on January 27, 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, which required the release of all United States POWs held in North Vietnam and the withdrawal of all United States Armed Forces from South Vietnam. And whereas the United States Armed Forces completed the withdrawal of combat units and combat support units from South Vietnam by March 30th, 1973. And whereas on April 30th, 1975, North Vietnamese regular forces captured Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, marking the official end of the Vietnam War. And whereas, as American military personnel completed their tours of duty in Vietnam, they returned home to a citizenry that was divided in its opinions of that conflict, and many people failed to distinguish their political and philosophical viewpoints towards the war from the individuals who had served. And whereas, in the intervening decades, our citizenry has come to understand more clearly the importance of recognizing and respecting the service of military veterans regardless of any other opinions or issues. And whereas the need for a formal recognition of the return of veterans from the Vietnam War is as important now as ever, not only for those veterans who served, but for all citizens. And whereas April 30th, 2021 marks the 46th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring therein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, hereby honor the service and sacrifices of the military veterans in Colorado who served in Vietnam, including the South Vietnamese soldiers who served alongside American troops, and recognize the particular challenges faced by many of those veterans, both while serving in Vietnam and upon returning home. Finally, we express our appreciation for their fortitude, their activism on behalf of fellow veterans, their steadfast patriotism, their many accomplishments and contributions, and the leadership they have shown to their families, community organizers, and the state, and encourage all Coloradans to remember the sacrifices made by Vietnam veterans.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I'll be really brief. We had just recently passed the Welcome Home Vietnam Vets bill, and a lot of people had an opportunity to speak to it, and maybe they'll have something to say later on. I appreciate the fact that we passed that, and this is something we should continue to talk about. And again, there are a lot of Vietnam vets who are still out there, amongst us, and some of them are a little quieter than, you might be used to. So, and a lot of times all you need to do is be around them and be willing to listen when they're ready to talk. So, thank you all for that, and I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you as well, sir.
Thank you, and it's an honor to serve with you, Mr. Sullivan.
Sir.
Members, I'm honored to get the opportunity to speak about Vietnam veterans. We had an opportunity, Mr. Sullivan's bill, for us to talk about those that we've known. That's why it's poignant for me to talk about this, because there's a number of those that came from my hometown. People that have influenced my life, people that have influenced the community that I live in, people that have influenced that part of the state. You know, they went very young. As was stated the other day, average age was 19. To step into that theater at 19 took an incredible amount of courage. But it took nearly the same amount of courage to come home. Because when they got here, they were cast out. They were the ones that people said, no, you did wrong. You went and you did wrong. Most of my friends didn't have the choice. They were drafted. We make a joke of it every once in a while, because there's a song, and I heard it Saturday night. You know, he thought everyone was hip, and then they sent him off to Vietnam on his senior trip. That happened. That really did happen. That happened out in western Colorado, and it happened in Denver, and it happened across this United States. Now we have an opportunity to look at them and say, welcome home. Job well done. We need to do that. We need to do that as often as we can. Because one of the things those young men and women did after being cast out by the communities that had sent them, decided this will never happen again. We won't allow it. And they took it upon themselves, not through organizations, but just by themselves mainly, to go meet the young people coming home from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from all of the places that we've sent young people, and said to them, come, stand beside me. We're proud of you. And the states and the cities turned out to help them honor these young veterans we've got today. If they leave any legacy, it will be that they didn't drop the ball and let their young comrades come home without being honored. You know, that's something I think that will always stand as an honor to the Vietnam veteran, is no matter what he ended up feeling, no matter what he ended up experiencing, he decided, they decided, this won't happen again. For that, I thank them. For that, I respect them. And for that, I'm honored to be down here on this memorial.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We move for the adoption of SJR 11 and ask for an aye vote.
The motion before us is the adoption of SJR 11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. SJR 11 is adopted. Representative Catman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We ask that the morning roll call be added as co-sponsors to this memorial.
Is there any objection to adding the morning roll call as co-sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next, we have Senate Joint Resolution 12 with Representatives Pico and Michelson-Janay. Representative Michelson-Janay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We move SJR 12 and ask that it be read at length.
SJR 2112, concerning recognition of military veterans and MIA POW Appreciation Day. Whereas Colorado has a proud and distinguished history of dedicated military service by men and women of the state whose courage, heroism, and sacrifice preserve the liberties and democratic way of life set forth in our state and federal constitutions. And whereas Colorado is home to a significant number of military installations, including Fort Carson, the United States Air Force Academy, Buckley Air Force Base, Peterson Air Force Base, Shriver Air Force Base, and Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, that contribute not only to the national security of our nation, but to the economic health of our state. And whereas Colorado benefits significantly from the presence and military service of more than 49,000 men and women in our state who serve in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, the branch reserves, the Colorado National Guard, and the Civil Air Patrol. And whereas the men and women of the Colorado National Guard have served in defense of our nation and as the first military responders in support of civil authorities during domestic emergencies, and are celebrating their 161st anniversary this year. And whereas, in times of conflict around the globe, it is particularly appropriate to recognize the Coloradans in all branches and components of the armed services who serve around the world to protect the security and peace of our nation and other nations. And whereas, in addition to active members of the armed services, Colorado is the proud home of more than 400,000 military veterans who have served their country long and well and who bring great honor and distinction to the state. And whereas Colorado is home not only to active duty service personnel and veterans, but also to the countless family members of these men and women who display the same dedication, courage, and sacrifice. And whereas we should also never forget the sacrifices made for us by the 94 service members from Colorado declared missing in action or prisoners of war while defending the principles of liberty and justice in conflicts in Korea, Laos, and Vietnam. And whereas disparate and diverse groups of Coloradans, such as persons who are African American, Latino or Latina, or Hispanic, in addition to men and women of all backgrounds, are bound together in the United States Armed Services by their selfless dedication to the spirit of our nation, the ideals of freedom and democracy, and the cause of democracy and stability around the globe. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the 73rd General Assembly, hereby extend our heartfelt gratitude to our state's veterans, past and present, to all military men and women currently serving in the armed services, and to the family members of active duty personnel and veterans, and that we remember and honor those prisoners of war and those missing in action from previous conflicts, that we express our continued partnership with and support of Fort Carson, and maintain our strong commitment to supporting ongoing military training at the Mountain Post, and that we encourage the citizens of Colorado to join in the celebration of Colorado's military veterans and MIA and POW Appreciation Day on April 5th, 2021, in recognition and honor of the thousands of fellow citizens in the military who protect and serve their communities, state, and country.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We move for the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 12 and ask for an aye vote. I'd like to add a few comments.
Yeah, is there anything you're supposed to say?
Go right ahead, Representative Pico.
My own service started during the Vietnam War, so I'm a Vietnam era. I deployed in the other direction. But I served with many of those who served in Vietnam and learned from them. And I served on active duty through the Gulf War, followed the Soviet Union, and then served as a contractor all the way through the following 9/11 and the following conflict that we've had. My family service started a lot earlier, and I think a lot of us have talked about what our families is. And my family service started before there was the United States in a different army. It was the Spanish Army and then the Mexican Army, and I served in that capacity until 1846 as a rampage through California, raising havoc with the U.S. Army at that point. It took the U.S. Marine Corps to end the discussion. And the cannon that was surrendered at that time are now on display at the Naval Academy. As a senior officer, Mexican officer still standing in California at that time, his surrender ended the fighting in California. And at that point, we became Americans. And he then went on to serve in the California National Guard and ended up commanding the force that he had fought against. So not very many people have done that. And he also served in the California legislature. And the family then has continued on, serving in every generation from the Civil War right on up through today, where I have many of my children, in-laws, are presently on active duty, some deployed currently. In every one of the armed forces, Space Force included, with the one exception of the Coast Guard. I'm sure we can get that one covered one of these days.
I say that not necessarily to highlight my own family service, but to highlight the fact that this is a similar experience of millions. And as representative of all of them, that I stand here and ask for an aye vote.
Representative Michaelson Janae.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, and thank you, Representative, for all of your service and your family's service. My family's story, as Representative Pico alluded to, is not much different. The one difference is my family came to America to escape the murder of their families. And my grandfather was in World War II going back to Poland to try and find his relatives to bring back alive to the United States. That did not happen for him. But when he came back, I obviously wasn't born yet, so he was, I'm told, a very changed man. He was very rigid, my grandfather, and I had a hard time connecting with him. But he had pictures, he had memorabilia, he had things I'm really sure he wasn't allowed to take out of Germany. And he was in the second group liberating Dachau. So while our biological family was not saved, many of our landsmen, countrymen, were saved. But he came back alive. My father, Vietnam era, like yourself, sir, and he, because Vietnam era, so he went the different direction, he had a great time in the Navy. He has pictures all over the world. And his service was something he enjoyed thoroughly. Though as an Orthodox Jewish man, he had to bring his own food along in the Navy. So anytime they came stateside, my grandfather would bring a big freezer of meat and fruit and all sorts of kosher food. I mean, fruit is kosher regardless, but that's what my grandfather would bring. And they got permission to load that freezer box on the dock, and when everybody else was eating something else, my father had a steak and nobody was happy. But he loved his time in the Navy, and he too came back alive. My husband served in the Desert Storm era, 8 years in the Air Force, desperate to be deployed, and instead they put him in he became a dental lab tech. And every time he said, please, can I, send me somewhere else? They said, sorry, this is a position, there's a different word, this is a position that we can never fill, so you're gonna be stuck here for the rest of your life. So after 8 years of begging and pleading and serving on the honor guard and burying a lot of people in Louisiana, he came out of the Air Force alive. Today, our son is active duty in the United States Marine Corps. I don't know that I can explain the feeling that some of you also know of pride and fear and overall awe at his success. This kid was a tough kid. We had a lot of problems with him, a lot of problems. That's why he went to the Marine Corps. And now he's a staff sergeant. And we, like many other families, pray and hope that he too comes home. For those families whose loved ones did not come home, we honor you, we love you, and we hold you in our hearts. We were lucky, and we share our luck and love with you. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 12. All those in favor say yes or
Yes.
aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Joint Resolution 12 is adopted. Representative Pico.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We ask that the morning roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Is there any objection to the morning roll call being added as co-sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Thank you. Next is Senate Joint Resolution 13. Madam Majority Leader Eskar and Representative Luck. Madam Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We move SJR 13 and ask that it be read at length.
SJR 2113, concerning the 53rd anniversary of the capture of the USS Pueblo by North Korea. Whereas the USS Pueblo was originally launched as a United States Army cargo ship in 1944, but was transferred to the United States Navy and renamed the USS Pueblo in 1966. And whereas the USS Pueblo was named for the city of Pueblo, Colorado, and the county of Pueblo, Colorado, and was the third ship in the naval fleet to bear the name Pueblo. And whereas, after leaving Japan in early January 1968 on an intelligence mission, the USS Pueblo was attacked by the North Korean military on January 23, 1968. And whereas, according to the United States naval authorities and the crew of the USS Pueblo, the ship was in international waters at the time of the attack. And whereas, one crew member of the USS Pueblo was killed during the attack, and 80 crew members and 2 civilian oceanographers were captured and held for 11 months by the North Korean government. And whereas, this year marks the 53rd anniversary of North Korea's attack on the USS Pueblo and her crew. And whereas, the USS Pueblo is still in commission in the United States Navy, but continues to be held by the North Korean government and is currently a museum in Pyongyang, North Korea. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, recognize the bravery and sacrifice of the crew of the USS Pueblo, and that we take pride in the fact that the USS Pueblo bears the name of a city and a county in Colorado, and therefore the citizens of Colorado should be aware of the incident that occurred with the USS Pueblo 53 years ago. And that we continue the call for Kim Jong-un and the North Korean government to return the USS Pueblo to the people of the United States, and that we hereby designate January 23rd of each year as USS Pueblo Day, a day to remember and honor the brave crew of the USS Pueblo.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Not only is this significant for me because I represent a portion of the city of Pueblo, but my father, only a few years later, found himself working military intelligence on the border of North Korea and recounts some tales of some close calls where he too almost found himself captured and brought into the North Korean state. The men and women who have served our nation have done so with such great courage. They have honored us. They have honored us with blessings and prosperity and liberty unforetold. I'm grateful for days like this, days when we can reflect and remember those who have served, those who are serving, and also to stand and inspire hopefully a future generation to continue in their footsteps. Recently, I attended an event where the speaker asked everyone who was a vet to stand. Noting some individuals in the audience who were vets that remained seated, I inquired of them afterward, why didn't you stand? Why didn't you stand to be applauded? Why didn't you stand to be honored? And their response to me was convicting and compelling. They said, almost in unison, we desire not the claps of the people in those rooms. What we desire is for them to now stand and to ensure that our liberties remain protected in this nation. That is our job. We are the first line of defense here. So thank you all for making sure that the first question we ask as we pass any bill is, does this uphold the Constitution And does it honor their sacrifice? Thank you.
Madam Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. To the resolution in front of us, every year I've served here, I've ran this resolution. And I think we will continue to run this resolution until we have that ship back under American control. And it's not just about the physical boat, right? 81 folks were held captive for over 11 months. One person was killed when the boat was taken over. Those 81 that were held captive, when they were released 11 months later, they returned home to what I've been told was a hero's welcome on Christmas Eve in San Diego. But if you talk to them now, and if you Google it, there's a lot of news stories that have been done with those survivors. They talked about how every single day of torture that they went through, they were making a decision to stand up for their country or to protect themselves. And I don't think that's any different for anyone who has served. I'll talk later when we have more comment time about my own family's sacrifices for this country. But the USS Pueblo is still in captivity today, but not just the boat. There's 10 encryption machines and thousands of pages of top secret documents that are still in North Korea's possession. Every year we ask for this boat back. And I think it's fitting that the representatives from the Home of Heroes are the ones who are standing up here once again, another year later, asking for the return of that boat, of that ship. Sorry, not a boat, ship. My Navy grandfather would not be happy with me right now. But we appreciate you always indulging us every year and letting us share this with you all every single year until we have brought that back home. So with that, we ask for an aye vote.
Members, the motion before us is the adoption of SJR 13. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. SJR 13 is adopted. Thank you. Madam Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. We ask that the morning roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Is there any objection to adding the morning roll call as co-sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Thank you. And next, we have the final resolutions before we have comments from others. And it's Senate Joint Resolution 2115, Representatives A. Valdez and Holtorf. Representative Valdez.
Madam Speaker Pro Tem, we move Senate Joint Resolution 15 and ask that it be read at length.
SJR 2115, concerning recognition of the contributions of Latina and Latino veterans. Whereas Latina and Latino individuals have fought in support of the United States and the cause of freedom in every American conflict since the American Revolution. Where Colonel Bernardo D. Galvez, the Spanish governor of the Louisiana Territories, and his men assisted General George Washington and the Continental Army in defeating the British forces that were advancing into the then southwestern U.S. territories. And whereas, despite 150 years of fighting with distinction in support of the United States, it was not until World War II that Latino and Latina service members became a truly forceful presence. It is estimated that nearly 500,000 Latina and Latino Americans, often the children of immigrants who entered the United States in previous decades, fought for the cause of freedom in that war, including the 158th Regimental Combat Team and the 141st Infantry Regiment, which consisted of all Spanish-speaking soldiers. And whereas, in 1948, Dr. Hector Garcia of Corpus Christi, Texas, founded the American GI Forum as a means of addressing cases in which Latina and Latino veterans were being denied services by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs under the GI Bill, including educational, medical, housing, and other basic benefits. Dr. Garcia and the American GI Forum worked diligently to secure equal access to all benefits, and in 1984, Dr. Garcia was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Ronald Reagan. And whereas, in the North Korean War, the all-Puerto Rican 65th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Born Queers, served 3 years in service in the mountainous terrain of Busan, Korea. And further efforts were awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, a Meritorious Unit Commendation, and 2 Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citations. In 2016, the unit was recognized with a Congressional Gold Medal, and whereas the Vietnam War, in which more than 80,000 Latino and Latina service members served, 13 of whom were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, many of these Latina and Latino soldiers were drawn to the military by the opportunity to transcend their working class roots and by the opportunity afforded them by the GI Bill. And whereas, in total, 61 Latina and Latino veterans have been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for their service in the United States Armed Forces. Whereas, more than 156,000 Latina and Latino service members are currently active duty members of the armed forces, and more than 1.2 million Latina and Latino veterans call the United States home. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, recognize and commend the efforts and sacrifice of the millions of Latina and Latino men and women who have served the cause of freedom in and alongside the armed forces of the United States.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Veteranos latinoamericanos ha servido con orgullo en todos los departamentos de las Fuerzas de Armas. Hombres y mujeres descendientes de hispanoamericanos, pero estadounidenses todos. Decidieron a levantar armas a defender la libertad querido. El presidente Ronald Reagan lo dijo lo mejor cuando dijo famosamente, la gente no ha aprendido la gran lección del patrimonio. Las lecciones de la familia, del hogar, la iglesia y la comunidad. Más que 400,000 servido en la Guerra del Mundo II, más que 80,000 servido en la Guerra de Vietnam y más que 20,000 en la guerra contra Saddam Hussein en Irak. Y más que 60 medallas de honor recibido a estos gentes. Latinos tiene el legado orgulloso de servir militar en los Estados Unidos. Now I'll read this in English. Latin American veterans have served proudly in all branches of the armed forces. Men and women of Hispanic and Latin descent, but Americans all, chose to take up arms to defend the freedoms that we hold dear in the Constitution of the United States. President Ronald Reagan said it best when he said famously, "Some people have not learned the great lesson of our Hispanic heritage, the lesson of family and of home and of church and of community." Over 400,000 served in World War II. Over 80,000 served in the Vietnam War, and over 20,000 in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And most proudly, there have been over 60 medals of honor that have been awarded to these people. Latinos have a proud legacy of military service in the United States in defending our Constitution.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. So, as my co-sponsor here discussed, there's just a long and proud history of Hispanic service in the armed forces in all branches. In my preparation for talking about how we would show our appreciation, learned so much. I, for instance, did not know the very first admiral in the U.S. Navy was a Latino man. I did not know that the first fighting ace in the Korean War was a Latino man. There are just so many amazing folks historically who have been a part of our armed forces. And even today, we continue to have heroes like Representative Ortiz that serve proudly in our armed forces. But I did want to recognize two very important Latinos to me, and I'm hoping that I can display my father, who is a Vietnam veteran. He served in the Vietnam, he's there on the left, and on my left. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. It was obviously a very a tough subject in the family. We didn't discuss it much. But he, like so many other Latino kids, were recruited into the military and went and served proudly their nation in Vietnam. And then the other picture I have here is my sister, who retired after 24 years of service in the United States Air Force. This was taken at her retirement ceremony. I come from a family that has a long, proud history of service. And, you know, today not only are we speaking about the contributions of Latinos broadly, but I'd also just like to recognize that I grew up in the tradition of the military. I grew up with the pride of having family members who had the ultimate sacrifice of going to war and to coming home. And I just today think that it's so amazing that we as a body are taking the time to recognize everybody who served and ensured that we can stand here today in freedom and that we can have debate with each other and we can come to agreement on what is best for the people of the state of Colorado and the people of the United States. So thank you very much for taking the time to recognize this today.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We ask that the morning roll call be added.
We already moved it.
Oh, we already moved it. What about the roll call?
Afterwards.
Oh.
Great. I think we still, let's vote on it. And so the question before us is there any objection to a voice vote? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 15. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Joint Resolution 15 is adopted. Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We ask that the morning roll call be added as the co-sponsors to this joint resolution.
Is there any objection to adding the morning roll call as co-sponsors? Seeing none, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Okay, thank you, members. I think that brings us back to general discussion about the resolutions. With that, Madam Speaker Pro Tem Benavides.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I'm speaking to you on behalf of our Latino caucus. And I want to tell you about, first start with thousands of Latinos and Native Americans have served in every U.S. conflict and have proudly worn the uniform. Their military contributions and their sacrifice to help preserve democracy deserves recognition. I want to tell you about 2 brave, distinguished military members. When I tell their stories, I'm certain some of you, especially former military, will know who these 2 gentlemen are. But if not, you need to know about them. The first one I want to tell you about is Billy Walkabout. He was a member of the Cherokee Nation. He was part of the Blue Holly Clan. In November 1968, Walkabout was only 18 years old, and he was an Army Ranger when he and 12 members of his team were on a mission inside enemy lines. They were awaiting the extraction helicopter, and he administered first aid to many of the injured. He bandaged one soldier's severe chest wounds and revived another with heart massage. When the extraction helicopter came, Walkabout carried or dragged the 12 to the chopper while running around firing his weapons to cause distraction fire. Walkabout received serious injuries that day. The other members of his team who didn't die later did die of their injuries. Walkabout, the battle lasted several hours. and he was seriously injured and spent 6 months in a coma. Walkabout received the Distinguished Cross, the Purple Heart, 5 Silver Stars, 5 Bronze Stars for his heroics that day. And remember, he was only 18 years old. Walkabout was among the most decorated soldiers in the war and the most decorated Native American soldier in the Vietnam War. Walkabout retired as a second lieutenant, and he died in 2007, in part from his injuries as he was on a kidney transplant because of internal injuries, and he also suffered the repercussions of Agent Orange. He's remembered well at powwows annually and throughout Oklahoma where he lived. The second member I wanted to talk to you about is one that Representative Ortiz asked me to talk to you about, and that was Master Sergeant Roy Benavides. I'm sure he asked me porque somos tocayos, sino más por apellidos, but more so because Master Sergeant Roy Benavides is truly a legend. He was from Cuerno, Texas, and his parents died from tuberculosis before he was 8. He and his brother were adopted by his aunt and uncle, who raised him with their 8 children. He dropped out of school at 7th grade, and he labored in the fields in Texas and here in Colorado. In 1965, when his first tour in Vietnam, he stepped on a landmine, and he was told he would never walk again because of severe spinal injuries. But he did, and he returned to Vietnam in January of 1968. 5 months later, he volunteered to extract a 12-member Special Forces team. He was just passing by when he heard it on the radio and said, "I'll go with you," and jumped into the helicopter with only a medic bag and a knife. There was so much gunfire, the helicopter couldn't land. So Benavides jumped 10 feet from the hovering chopper, and he ran to help the injured. After he got everybody on the first chopper, it crashed, and he had to remove all of the injured. And while doing this, he was calling in for more support and fighting off the enemy for another 6 hours. Benavides sustained 7 major gunshot wounds, 28 shrapnel holes. His right lung was fully destroyed. His mouth and the back of his head were injured because he was hit with the butt of a rifle and killed the enemy that was hitting him with the Bowie knife that he carried. When they were evacuated, he was holding his intestines in his hands. He wasn't expected to live. In fact, when they evacuated him and moved him before they took him to the hospital, they thought he was dead. And when they were zipping up the body bag, he couldn't talk because of the dried blood around his mouth and in his eyes. So all he could do was spit in the doctor's face. He spent over a year in the hospital. Benavides received the Congressional Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Purple Heart, and numerous medals. He died in 1998, and he was the first, in an unprecedented move, he was the first non-commissioned officer who had a U.S. naval ship named after him. He also has the Special Operations Complex in Fort Bragg named after him, as well as a school. He is also remembered for his bravery, as his call sign is often used to help muster courage in extremely dangerous situations. Some of you know it, Tango Mike Mike, also referred to as that mean Mexican. Both of these men left an unforgettable legacy of bravery and honor, and we ask that you remember them on this special day to honor the military. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Further discussions from members on any of the resolutions? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, folks, I was in a conversation in this room a couple years ago, and I didn't realize, as we were honoring Gold Star families, that this letter is not better known, and I made a little promise to myself that I would read it every year when we honor Gold Star families, because I think it is so important. As many of you know, more Americans died in the Civil War because it was a conflict among ourselves. And we had a president who had the task of sending letters to families. And this letter is simply one of the most poignant pieces of Abraham Lincoln's writing I've ever heard. It's a letter to Mrs. Bixby. Dear Madam, I have been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any word of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom.
Further discussions? Madam Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would be remiss if I didn't take some time to thank those in my family who have served. My brother-in-law served several different deployments in Afghanistan. He's part of the Army. My dad's father, my grandfather Esgar, he served in the Army. But it's my grandfather on my mom's side, my mom's dad, his story that always hits me every year when we sit here and reflect on what this day actually means. You see, long before Pearl Harbor, the USS Arizona was his ship, not boat, his ship. And he served proudly. And in fact, you may have noticed at some point, you may not have noticed actually, I have an anchor tattooed on my left foot. That's in honor of this man. That's how much he loved the Navy. When I thought of how to honor my most favorite person in the entire world, that was the symbol that first came to my mind, because he talked about his time in the Navy with such pride. In fact, after Pearl Harbor, when the Arizona had been bombed, he re-enlisted because he was so mad. He re-enlisted and served proudly in the U.S. Navy. I'll never forget how important that was to him in the stories that he shared with us every single day, and how much that actually truly shaped who he was to the rest of our family. So thank you for giving me a moment to really honor him again, not with a tattoo, because he probably wouldn't love that, but thank you for allowing me this presence to more eloquently thank him for his service.
Thank you, Majority Leader Eskar. Further discussion? Seeing none, I think that brings us back to announcements and introductions. Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and all of that is a somewhat tough act to follow. But I did have an announcement just about this week's judiciary calendar, because we weren't here Friday. The last time the calendar was printed was Thursday afternoon. So in the interest of notice, and I've shared this with members, I just want to announce what tomorrow's and Wednesday's calendar will be. Tomorrow, we'll hear 1016 back for action only, and then 1211. And on Wednesday, and this is where what I'm about to say differs from the calendar that was finalized Thursday, but will be reflected this morning. Wednesday, we'll be hearing Senate Bill 75, Senate Bill 59, Senate Bill 66, House Bill 1182, and Senate Bill 124. Afternoon, 1:30 p.m., 107 as usual. Thanks.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I've requested and have received permission to be absent tomorrow, Tuesday, April 6th.
So approved. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee will be meeting at 1:30 in LSBA to hear House Bills 1212 and 1231.
Any further announcements or introductions? See none. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.